Titanic. A ship known more by the film with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet rather than the historical 1912 event. But who could ever forget Jack and Rose? One of the greatest love stories of all time, comparable to only Romeo and Juliet. A rich girl leaving her life of wealth and power behind, all in the name of love. The film has had an immense impact on our culture and the way we think about romance. At the very least, it is a great symbol for how Western film views love and affection. But do these ideals hold up? It's easy to get tied into romance when it's a movie, but what about when it's real life? Why do a lot of popular films all share the same belief? That love is the most important thing and material things, they don't matter. Sounds a little communist to me. But in reality, love is a lot more complicated in real life, especially when it comes to marriage. And things get even more complicated when you get economical with it. Now, advertising, branding, and even Marxist ideas come into play. But in order to begin to even try to analyze any of this, we're gonna have to take things back. And I mean way back. Marriage. Although it may have been called different things over time, the concept has been around for thousands of years. Finding a significant other to form a pair and raise children, it's as old as humanity itself. But it wasn't until the rise of domestic agricultural societies that marriage really started to find its way into our society. The rise of civilization and agriculture led to many new complex issues for humanity to sort out. Two being land and property rights. Marriage became a way for these rights to be recognized by the state. Unfortunately, in most cultures, society has been patriarchal, so a lot of these rights have gone to male counterparts, driving a lot of systemic issues and gender roles. Fast forward to the present day, and women's rights have made significant strides. Unfortunately, this is not the case around the globe, or even a century ago here in the US. Women have struggled with owning property and land independently, without a husband. Despite the many differences across many cultures, with marriage, one thing has reigned in common. Marriage has always been more of a business deal.
Our friend Karl Marx had a lot to say about marriage. Marx had a very particular view of marriage, especially within a capitalist system. Marx stated that marriage established within a capitalist society was used purely for financial reasons. This meant that in order to survive, people would marry to maintain both their social and economic status instead of marrying for love. Marx coined this aspect with the term commodity fetishism. Jolly, a professor of communications at the University of Massachusetts, also brings up the point that commodity fetishism acts as a void for emotions. He goes on to say, the fetishism of commodities consists in the first place of emptying them of meaning. Now, with Titanic, it attempts to bring light to this issue when it comes to the relationship between Rose and Cal.
There's nothing I couldn't give you. There's nothing I'd deny you, if you would not deny me.
In this instance, the heart of the sea is a physical representation of commodity fetishism by symbolizing a union that is purely based on financial and hierarchical gain. Additionally, this situation that Rose is presented with perfectly encompasses Jolly's idea of society forcing individuals to commit to relationships void of any meaning for the sake of living a life of little to no financial burden.
But popular movies around the world tell us something else. Forget about everything else. As mentioned before, things get complicated when you tie capitalistic desires into romance. You try to fit a triangle into a square-shaped hole. Happiness cannot be found there. It can only be found in true love. Films like Titanic, Lady and the Tramp, and Shrek emphasize this. In Titanic, Rose is pushed to stay with her fiancé, Cal. Staying with him will help solve her family's financial issues and keep them in a higher class. Lois becomes severely depressed, and Cal is a toxic partner. When she meets Jack and focuses on him for his personality and their relationship, she feels like
I'm flying!
Similarly, in Shrek and Lady and the Tramp, Fiona and Lady both decide to reject their lives of luxury in order to be with someone that society is telling them to stay away from. In the end, their lives with Shrek and the Tramp end up being their happily ever after.
While Titanic is one of the most influential love stories in our modern era, it is certainly not the only one. As stated before, multiple films try and spread these messages of love and rejection of material things. However, when you step back and really look at these films, you would notice the hypocrisy within them. Before we go forward, we need to understand the concept of culture industry. Culture industry is a term used by the two social thinkers and Marxists, Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, to explain the phenomenon of popular culture used to make products within a capitalist society. They explain that culture industry forces everything that is made within it to be made purely for profit. Art is no longer autonomous, but is rather than a commodified product of the economic relationships of production. Titanic is no exception to this rule. While it spreads its message of reject wealth and embrace love and happiness, at the same time, it was growing the amount of ticket sales and eventually rose to become the third highest grossing movie of all time with an estimated earning of $2.2 billion. One has to wonder, with such a clear intent of making profit by preaching the exact opposite, how come no one has spoken against it? Adorno and Horkheimer have the answer to that too. They state that culture industry can also affect those consuming media. By providing a distraction from the everyday stress of life, entertainment transforms its viewers into individuals that are willing to ignore the issues of their current system and become more tolerant of the idea of maintaining it.
An important trait of a community is the ability to self-reflect and correct our ways of thinking. Right now, we live with a system that attempts to promote ideologies that lean towards a happier way of life and fulfilling relationships, but profits from the system that doesn't allow for either of these two to exist equally among all members of society. By being able to identify the problem and act towards correcting it, we can break the mold of this perpetuated system and strive for that happily ever after.